and the proposals. Patrick O'Keefe.
Can I make a recusal statement? This has come up in the past, and I made this comment each time, and that is that since my office is on this site, I cannot vote on the matter. But the city attorney mentioned that because I previously represented Francis Collins, I can't comment. And my understanding is that I can't comment on the Francis Collins parcels because I formerly represented Francis Collins. But I can comment on the other parcels. Just because they've been conglomerated in this proposal doesn't mean I can't comment on that. So I haven't decided whether I will comment, Mayor Davis, but I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Councilmember Fricke. Mr. Dayrit,
Yes,
our
good
world
evening.
traveler.
Good evening, Chair Davis, members of the agency. Can we have the computer on, please, the laptop?
You need to reset, not reboot, but
Yes, good evening. The item before you today is regards the request for proposals for the Powell Hollis Greenway site. Just for background, well, this is the site. That's a proposed greenway alignment. The north is pointing to the left, and those are the properties comprising the Hollis Powell Greenway site.
Ignacio, just for people that are home, would you come back to that for just a second and show people where Hollis and Powell is and where the Greenway cuts through? We all know, but
Okay.
every now and then I get comments from people that say this comes on and off so fast they don't get oriented.
This is Powell Street here on the right of the screen. Hollis is in the bottom, and this is the old UPRR spur. This is 59th Street, and this is the Hollis Street project.
Thank you.
Discussions on the site began sometime last year when the abatement on the Alders property became an issue as to the physical condition of the site. And later in the year, the council authorized, passed Resolution 68-06 and RDs 80-06, which basically had the following the findings in front of the screen, which stated that the site demonstrated visual, physical, and economic blight. The properties did not conform to the 1976 plan, the Hollis, the Shellmount plan, and the North Hollis Urban Design Program. The properties could either be developed separately or assembled by a single developer. And subsequent to that, this agency issued a request for proposal to the property owners only. The agency did receive letters and proposals which were subsequently declared by the agency as non-responsive, and the RFP was subsequently issued to interested developers. The requirements of the RFP were for an interested developer to propose a development team, show that they have experience to develop such a development with the references of each team member, provide financial information on the proposed development and on their financial wherewithal, provide a preliminary site plan on the proposal, and describe the development approach they were going to take in carrying out the development of the project. The agency received 3 submittals from interested developers. One is from Bayrock, which is Bayrock Residential, which is proposing 150 dwelling units and about 3,500 square feet of retail. The Stephen E. Block Company is proposing 23 residential units on the Alders property alone. So their proposal only involves the Alders property and does not include the Wilson property or the Collins properties. It also this development also reserves about 100 feet, the southernmost portion nearest the Hollis-Powell intersection, as open space. The Wareham Development proposal is comprised of 105 square feet of commercial space and a ground floor coffee shop and some open space as well on the southern portion of the site. and each of the developers will make a brief presentation before you with some graphics. So-
Ignacio, before you move ahead, flip that graphic back and show me how far 100 feet on the southerly part of the program, how far that goes back. Yeah, where's 100 feet go?
Okay, the Alders property is, extends to here. So that's a triangular section. And 100 feet will bring you roughly to about here. This is the elevation 22. So for reference, this is a building of about, I don't know, about 5 or 6 units on the Greenway and on Powell Street.
Thank you.
So going back to developers, Bay Rock Residential, just a brief background on them, and they can certainly add when they come over to the podium. They were established in 2000 and primarily as residential developers in the western U.S. Jordan Real Estate Investments is a joint venture in their proposal, and KTGY Architects is their architect. And is anyone from Bay Rock here? Stuart? So you can just move.
Thanks, Ignacio. Madam Mayor and development agency members. Stuart Grendel, Bay Rock Residential. This site we see as a real opportunity to maintain and expand an intensity that's occurring across the street. So we were very intrigued with the location and what's evolving in the immediate neighborhood. Particularly impressed with Mr. Robbins' architecture across the street. So, we've took approximately 2 acres here and really intensified the density to create 150 units with a mixed-use component. Consists of a 4-story residential structure, primarily a residential structure, wood frame, contemporary design, which will consist of 150 residential units to have a condominium map. It's our intention, if they were built today, that we would rent them, with having the flexibility of doing some conversion possibility in the future, with essentially an even mix of both 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. So a smaller unit designed to really appeal to that immediate workforce community that's evolving in the area. Also, without benefit of the overhead, we really saw this site as an appropriate buffer from what's really occurring to be a biotech corridor up Hollis Street, and create a buffer to the residential to the east, particularly elevation 22. Sometimes other uses can start conveying themselves into the neighborhood, and homeowners can get upset. So we thought this was an appropriate land use with an appropriate amount of commercial. The garage is partially submerged and we met the parking standard of approximately 338 parking spaces. So it's about a 128,000-foot building. Building frontage is set back from curb to allow full sidewalk and landscaping buffer. So the interesting thing here is that in taking our designer, KTGY, which is a Southern California-based national architecture firm with an office, very active office up here, specializing in high-density residential and mixed-use developments, we really kind of scoped the whole Hollis Street corridor. And as you can see, the older buildings really don't have any pedestrian nature, and we have an auto-dominated corner at Powell and Hollis. And what's occurring there now is that we're starting to see more of a pedestrian environment, either with more doorknobs in the form of residential, but a more intensified use. And looking at the size of the sidewalks that exist and the opportunities that present themselves for future development of parcels along Hollis, we thought this was a great opportunity. Also, thinking about the southeast corner of Powell and Hollis, otherwise known as the Jones property, similar opportunity is going to occur there, most likely with some residential. So, and now we've got apparently a cafe going in at elevation 22, and we have the Greenway. So we really see ourselves not turning our back on Hollis Street. So I won't bore you with the other particulars, but basically we're taking that automobile access, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but we know there's a queuing problem there on Hollis at Powell, And without the benefit of having a traffic study, we just kind of winged it and said, this is probably where we need to be. But of course, a study would back that up in terms of having our access, and then we've had more dominant access on 59th. And then the corners. I remember at Mr. Robbins' presentation of that beautiful building, there was a lot of discussion about creating that people space down at the corners, retail, commercial, and we've done that here. The site plan, again, it's very difficult to create an efficient plan on a triangular site, but essentially it's what's known as a double-loaded corridor building. And we have some open catwalks in the courtyard. The courtyard to be lavishly landscaped and try to soften the hardened urban design. More importantly, we've just got a fantastic opportunity to protrude into the setback along the greenway and create a real residential feel there that we thought would be most pleasing to the eyeballs that are across the street at elevation 22. And what really occurs here is now we've got sort of an eastern progress for residential and commercial, and we're almost enveloping the Doyle Street residential neighborhood and beyond. So we've started the introduction of stoops onto the greenway. The corners at the northern corners of Hollis, the northern corner of Hollis and Powell contain commercial, and then the southern corner at the triangle, I don't have the benefit of a pointer, but the southern corner of the site at the triangle would have a retail commercial space, 20-foot clear height. I can't recall what elevation 22 is, but I think it's about 14 or 15 feet high. So now we're establishing a gateway element with the design. And then here's just a quick section. You can see the higher ceilings. When commercial retail tends to evolve over time, the one thing we do when we build mixed use is we tend to forget about the retail down below, and we handicap ourselves in the leasing and marketing of that space by not creating a real desirable space for an operator. So we've kind of blown the ceilings up here and cannibalized the parking a little bit to do so. And again, here's a typical section. So 55 feet high, 10-foot plates, 9-foot clear height inside. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
What's the height of the building?
55 feet at its highest point, which was one of the parameters outlined for us in the package.
And given the residential market, it looks like a viable project to you?
It does. We were somewhat vague in our economic proposal. We do not, I think we're the only applicant or proposer that does not have land control of one of the sites. We've attempted to negotiate for the past several months on the Miller property with the hope of gaining control of that, and we were not successful. However, we put the time and the money in to do this presentation, and I know, we all know these things tend to evolve over time. They never happen very quickly, and things change. So I'm very interested in hearing what your thoughts, your agency's thoughts were for this site tonight specifically. More importantly, the residential market, you're going to lose a lot of housing stock over at what's now known as Bridgeway, the Emery Bay Apartments, Emery Bay Club Apartments. The second and last phase of that development is being marketed, and I know the affordable housing there is sunsetting. That agreement is sunsetting, or has some sunset aspect that's occurring very quickly. So you're losing a lot of what's been known as some working class housing. Our proposal here would meet and satisfy your inclusionary housing ordinance, and we'd be very amenable to negotiating some deeply affordable units based on some financial program. And my experience is in the Near East Bay, your staff is about as creative as it gets, so I'm confident we could do something there.
We're not losing anything at Bridgeway, are we? Are we replacing that with agency funds?
We are going to be replacing it in another project, yes.
Yeah, we're going to be replacing that.
But you are losing 430 middle market units that are being converted to condominiums in the first phase. So my perception of the rental market today is that it's ramped up. There's high demand. There's been very little supply. You've got the BRE properties coming on, and that's a real drop in the bucket for your job base here, and creating the job housing balance, as you know, closest to your core is probably an intelligent thing, and we think this is an appropriate site to do so.
Any other questions for Stuart?
Thanks, Stuart.
Ruth?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
The next developer is Stephen E. Block and Company. They have 40 years experience in commercial and residential development. Their designers are the Ratcliffe Architects, and the proposal covers only the Alders property. And Adam?
Chairperson Davis and members of the agency, we're very pleased to have the opportunity to present our proposal to you in person and to flesh out an earlier submittal which was limited, as our core focus based on your feedback at the December meeting was getting the Alders property cleaned up and moving in the right direction away from blight as quickly as possible. I am Adam Block, Vice President with the Stephen E. Block Company. We have 30 years experience in East Bay development. Our offices are located in Berkeley. A couple of years ago, in 2005, we committed that all of our new projects were going to be certified sustainable, certified green projects, and we're pleased we'll be breaking ground on the first such building in Berkeley this summer. We're extremely excited to be working with Ratcliffe on this project. We have a long 18-year relationship with them. In fact, we co-developed their offices over on Hollis and Beaudry. And Kit Ratcliffe and the firm are very committed to sustainability, so we see a terrific fit with our goals. Brief overview of our proposal. As Mr. David noted, the proposal is for the Alders parcel only. We have a long relationship with the Alders family as well, and we have a signed master lease and option agreement for the site. In response to the North Hollis Urban Design Program and our own research, our plan calls for a mix of both the neighborhood serving retail and residential units. I want to clarify that it's not just a retail project. The split's about 1/3 retail and 2/3 residential by square footage. All of this lifted above partially submerged parking on the site. We're not requesting any purchase assistance or any other financial subsidy from the city. So as I mentioned, all of our new projects are green. And as I explained to this agency back in December, we see brownfield rehabilitation as the best possible opportunity for sustainable development and see this as an ideal site. In terms of green, it's too early in the planning process to be certain of the various features, but we believe we can reach LEED Silver certification for this project, and we have additional details on sustainability later in the presentation we'll be happy to share with you. Our planning process involved evaluating the subject site in the neighborhood in the context of the North Hollis Urban Design Program and other governing guidelines. Our first step was to actually survey the neighborhood, and I hope it's easier to see the colors on your screens than it is on that screen. But we did a review of all of the sites and all the activities within about a 1/4 mile radius, 5 minutes walk of the subject site. And bordered on the west by the Amtrak tracks, our feeling is that pedestrians are disinclined to cross over the Powell Street Bridge. What was clear is the neighborhood desperately needs walkable neighborhood-serving retail options. The few pink spots that you can see on your screens are the only retail that's available to the many workers and residents in the area, and that encourages or even forces folks to get in their cars and drive to the regional retail services, such as those on the west side of the train tracks, for even the smallest need. So we really see retail as a clear need, but feel that adding residential to the project enriches the environment and allow us to create a project with a community feeling, one that's dynamic, both by day and by night. And I will turn it over to Bill from Ratcliffe.
Good evening. Yes, I'm from Radcliffe Architects, and it's been fortunate to be in association with the Block since 1989. We've lived
Talk
in
right into the microphone, please.
We've been working and sort of shopping in the area since 1989 as our staff kind of crawls across the neighborhoods. So we like this site, and we like this proposal. What I'd like to do is, we can advance. Our firm, again, is in a warehouse that is actually co-developed with the Blocks over on Doyle Street. And what I'd like to do is walk you through this proposal here.
Excuse me, feel free to raise that microphone so you don't have to bend over and we can hear you, and most importantly, people at home can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, as Adam mentioned, this proposal is actually very interesting, and it's very different, I think, than the other two. It's a sense that it's a scaled proposal for this neighborhood. We think we are actually working off of the Greenway and the plaza that's been developed, very complementary to Elevation 22, and we've sort of selected items that we think fit in this scale piece of property and within this neighborhood, reinforcing a lot of the ideas in the various studies. What I'm going to do is walk you through residential on top of retail, on top of a restaurant with an open courtyard. That's fine. Well, I can leave it there for a second. Again, the Alders property, as Adam mentioned, is actually this bottom triangle here. The Greenway, as I mentioned, is a place where we're going to interact along stoops from the residents and also the restaurant in the corner. We recognize and our proposal gives back the southern corner, the southern 100 feet of that triangle, and it's open to a restaurant and additional plaza development with vertical elements to kind of signify the gateway. We do have only access to Hollis Street, therefore we have a entry to the auto exit for our subgrade parking on that side. And we have a restaurant, again.
Show me the auto entry exit again,
Yes,
will you?
please, that's right in here.
You can see on, he's, can you do it with the mouse?
Okay,
59th Street. No,
all right,
Is only this piece here.
right.
right.
We only have access to Hollis.
So
Okay.
that would be through a driveway?
Right, it's a driveway that comes through, and then it actually slowly descends into a sub-grade parking structure. It's actually on a podium, and I'll show you that in a second. Lastly, again, I think, again, what we've got is a restaurant in the corner, which is down at this end here, building off of and kind of, again, reinforcing the plaza that's been started at this end. And I think what we've picked up from other developments nearby is that, again, to even further be successful is to have this open mews in the center, which has retail access from one side, and it has plaza access to the homes on the other side. So it's a very active inner courtyard. I'm not going to spend time on these. I'm going to get into, these were sort of inspirational photos. We've got some other ones that really talk about a podium. What I'm going to do is walk you through the objects sort of in terms of how they developed in our minds. We've got a subgrade half-level down parking in this area of the site. Level B, we call it. About 80 spaces at least. We've got a retail strip that fronts Hollis. We're looking at a setback of 8 to 10 feet on this side. Again, looking at the different studies, trying to activate the sidewalk that's currently deficient, but having folks be able to access that retail through podium stairs and such. I think we have a picture. We'd like to show you these two pictures of projects that are similar, that have access stoops up to retail off of grade. Adam can point that out. Very similar to how industrial buildings were actually renovated over time. The next color that will appear here is the restaurant, which has got almost a two-story type space fronting the plaza, as well as a piece that sneaks under some housing to the north. And the next color that shows up here is in blue are the housing units, which again, under market studies, we're looking at combinations of townhomes and 1 and 2 bedroom units. So that's a study going on to look at the right mix.
And what's the height on that?
Totally, we're looking at about 55 feet. We know that's negotiable, and we know it's tied to parking. So we're looking at 80 cars, and it seems to support this kind of housing, which I think was like 23 units in our last pass. But we know that's sort of a study that we'd like to talk to folks about over time. So again, what this does is it sort of creates a village. It's very active both at night and during the day. It steps back from Hollis Street. It also has stoops and variegated setbacks along the Greenway, picking up on what we think are the successful elements we see developing on the Greenway now. And lastly, what we're looking at is providing some vertical elements in the plaza corner to not only sort of signify the gateway, but also provide wind and sun protection. And we've even thought about sort of PV structures out there to sort of show green elements on the corner as sort of a feature to the gateway, to the Greenway entrance. I'm not sure we have time, but we'll go
Would you
through.
put solar panels on your roofs?
We were looking at that. It's sort of a combination of how much we can get in versus other features we might want. We've talked about green roofs for some of the residential looking down, but certainly a combination of those flat roofs is sort of a competing element, green roofs or PV. The PVs on the top make the most sense, and if there's any roofs below, which there looks like there will be, could possibly be green roofs. Again, we could talk more about this in Q&A, but the panels are a big feature, but we're also looking at basic energy efficiency, which is just to do less. We had a great study in our own building where we actually used the climate to actually do things without air conditioning and use natural ventilation. So we think this site is obviously a fit. The site selection, obviously, it qualifies as a brown site, and Adam is deep into that at this point, trying to figure that out, which is interesting. We have various ideas for stormwater control, as well as the C3 that we must comply with. The residential units, as well as the tall retail spaces in the restaurant, will all make use of great air and light and views in tall spaces. And then again, we're sort of constantly experimenting with the appropriate use of recycled materials. And then lastly here is just a quick sketch trying to, again, show the courtyard that's coming off the cafe and growing to the plaza, the use of wind screens or other devices to kind of celebrate the corner. We did sketches looking actually down from the bridge coming down, but we didn't bring those, but those are actually a key view as you come over the tracks and look down into the site. And then again, our basic scale of the proposal kind of mimics some of the other buildings and residential buildings nearby. The street is activated with the retail and the podium in this area here. And that's about it.
And your intent is to be LEED certified?
We think LEED silver is easily achievable, and then after that, it depends.
So until we get relatively far into the design development process, it's difficult to be able to identify each individual factor on the LEED score checklist and determine whether or not we'll be able to meet them. But given our experience with our current project and thinking through the site, its location.
Microphone.
I'm sorry. And the features that seem to make sense in the area, LEED silver looks achievable, and that would be our target for the project.
And the 100-foot open space that's still privately held and maintained by the owners of the property?
That's what we anticipate.
I see.
Are you able to fill in the financial information at all from what was given to us in our report?
We have done some very preliminary evaluations of the construction cost. My understanding or sense of the questions in the RFQ were that the city wanted to understand whether we would be requesting development assistance, subsidies, or other funds from the city, and the answer is that we're not. So the plan would be to do this entirely based on our private acquisition of the site and funding through our own funds, joint ventures with other developers with whom we have long relationships, and probably some debt financing as well.
That's a pretty good piece of financial
I'm
information.
pleased to hear it.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Certainly. Thank you.
Just for clarification, staff really just saw these drawings for the first time a few hours ago. So this is all news to us also, because what we provided in the packet was what we received by the deadline. And
Right.
this information
understand
came to us just recently.
Good.
The next proposal came from Wareham Development. As you know, they've been around Emeryville for 25 years, and they own 1.5 million square feet in Emeryville alone. Their development partners would include the Smith Group as architects, and Cornish and Carey and or C.B. Richard Ellis would provide leasing. And Rich, I will just press this.
I've got old school paper too, in case
Okay,
technology doesn't work well, so.
thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'm Jeff Sears with Wareham Development. Pleased to be here, Mayor, council members. Ignacio gave us 10 minutes. I'll try to use 5. We see this as a very pivotal site, So much so that we've actually been working with the owners of the existing Miller property to try to acquire it. We haven't accomplished that yet, but we've been working on it. We think the site overall is a great opportunity, if developed properly, to make the most of what we think it offers. We think it should have a few key components. We think it should be a commercially devoted development on the site. Emeryville has seen many, many of its sites, most of which were historically commercial, converted to residential. The two proposals you're considering here, other than ours, have a very high residential component. We think this site along Hollis is appropriate for a commercial project and will bring the sort of things that commercial projects can bring, a large improvement to the tax base as well as funding for the Emery go-round in the schools, and all the things that commercial projects are helping to do in Emeryville now. In terms of overall design, it's an interesting and very public site with that corner on Howell and on Hollis and Powell, and the inclination, I think, for most architects would be to blop a big signature solid structure in that corner to announce it, and in fact, the RFP proposal had a sketch like that. We think the opportunity really is just the opposite and create a very large void there. That's the strongest exclamation point we think we could bring to the site. So our design has almost the entirety of the Alder property, hundreds of feet off of Hollis, as a green space there that we think would be a very nice public amenity, as well as an announcement of the entry to the greenway there, and that also ties back to the pedestrian connectivity and green spaces that exist in our Emery Station campus. And I don't know that I can do this, but if you look at this drawing, you know, here's the greenway, which is, you've already...
Jeff, you might need the portable
Right.
so you can keep...
Thank you. So it's the greenway that you're finishing right here. This is the very large new addition of a green space that our project could bring, continuation of the greenway. And then standing here on the greenway, you'd have the opportunity to look back over the open space through this very large open portal that Emery Station East has over its large publicly accessible green space through Emery Station, which has inside green spaces that cut all the way through the building, all the way over here to the Amtrak station to allow people to pass on foot through green spaces all the way through these very long blocks. And then clearly it ties back with the very nice amenity that you've created to the greenway. So those are what we think the opportunities are on the site that just scream out and how we've designed our project. The project is 105,000 square feet, so that's fitting within your existing zoning density of 1-to-1 FAR, fitting within your existing height limits that you recently reduced down to 55 feet. We think that's appropriate scaling that allows for a transition from the larger buildings over at Emery Station to the west, to the Greenway, and the buildings to the east of that. It was mentioned in one of the other proposals that I believe that a residential developer has bought the site immediately south of this one and will probably be bringing in a large residential project. So again, we think, we don't know if that will happen, but we think trying to capture sites that can work for commercial in Emeryville is important. Certainly this one would add to the neighborhood and to what we hope we've accomplished with the Emery Station campus. Smith Group, we think, has done some really nice conceptual designs here. If we can go to the next one. They're obviously just the first pass at it. It's got subterranean parking, which we've done in Emeryville. I think others are following now in that lead, hiding it from public view, putting it off, the visible path. The entry to this project for cars would only be off 59th. Again, what this project does is the residential projects, because they need to have thinner blocks, often capture green space inside them. And we think this project, because it doesn't need to do that, takes all that green space that's sort of captured privately for the residential owners and puts it out in the public area at Hollis and Powell. We have designed it to take a cafe, coffee shop, some sort of active food site on the edge of the building on the south, right there at this large new green space. We mentioned our proposal, we have some flexibility because we want to make sure that works well with the Greenway. We'd like your feedback on it, but we think that's a great place for a place to stop, eat, rest, take advantage of the park, have some coffee before you walk or bike along the Greenway. Of course, we are committed to greenness, and I'm thrilled to hear other developers say those same things. This project will have green features. We'd like to experiment with LEED certification. It would be our first time. We're interested in doing that. Smith Group has a lot of experience with it. Many of the concepts we're already using in our other projects. Our Emery Station buildings have gas-fired cogeneration electrical plants on them. Emery Station East will. Emery Station East will have, on-site stormwater mitigation that you actually require of projects of this size, but we think is a great thing. This one would obviously have the same sort of thing, and we'd like to do more on that. So anyway, we think the opportunity to add more green space, add some commercial space, link to things that are already happening there that benefit pedestrians and the populace, both who live and work in Emeryville, is a great opportunity, and we hope that this project captures those. So now if you have any questions.
Yeah, Jeff, let me clarify. The 1/3 that's open space, that will still be privately held and maintained by you, but accessible to the public.
Yeah, we thought that was probably the optimal approach where you get the benefit without the cost and hassle.
Okay. And it sounds, from the other measures that you've taken in your other buildings, it sounds to me like you're halfway along the road to LEED certified. And am I hearing that you would do everything in your power to work toward LEED certification?
Yeah, I think this project would be one where we'd try to do that from the start. LEED often has a lot to do with paperwork. You can accomplish the same goals, but you have to file that paperwork and really know from the minute you enter the project that you're going to do that and be committed to it. It's also become something that more people are familiar with, and the burdens of the paperwork are easier because the actual actions of being green often occur. The paperwork just lets someone else prove to themselves and to the world that you've done it.
Do you have any idea of what kind of tenants you would want in the commercial portion?
It's been designed height-wise so it could work for office or biotech spaces. We're a firm believer in having flexibility because we can't force the market to have certain demands. Those markets have historically been strong in Emeryville. They're beginning to firm after a number of years where they weren't doing well. So our interest would be listening to the market. Certainly, it's a smaller building, so the opportunity for smaller and growing companies presents itself. The building design, at least the conceptual one, is one that could break up into smaller spaces.
Yeah, just a question. I don't quite get the green wall thing. How does that work? I mean, as I'm looking at this.
This is an idea that our architect has been experimenting with and we're interested in. And again, it's just sort of a thinking idea where there are really two sort of big picture environmental issues going on. One is a lot of this building is designed to be glass, and one of the issues with glass is, sort of modulating solar gain and so forth so that you're not using more energy cooling those spaces than, than you should. So what they've done here is they've sort of intending a little bit of a solar screen that helps, screen some of the sun out, but then it also gives you a framework onto which you could let plants grow. And so there's a little, you can't have it grow so that you can't see out it at all. But that was what they were experimenting with, and the idea was really to sort of see the greenway growing onto the building, so to speak, that distinction is softened between the hard building and the natural greenway.
I was a little concerned. I mean, it looks interesting, but by the same token, I was afraid this was going to be like this metal screen that was going to like envelop the building and.
This, this is just the most rudimentary thinking, and
yeah.
They were just trying to flag some issues that create dialogue that hopefully come up with the best ideas.
Thank you.
Ruth, did you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Ignacio? Thank you, Jeff.
I'm not that tall. So, as you have seen, we have three very good proposals. They're very different in character, but we try to evaluate them using some of the design criteria as a basis for figuring out, whether they fit within the agency's goals. One is, does the project fit within the site? Is it connected to the scale and character of the North Hollis neighborhood and to the Greenway? Based on what we've seen, we can say that all three projects actually do that, some to the extent greater than others, and this relates to the amount of open space they provide and the scale of the buildings. All the buildings are at 55 feet, and the range of buildings in that, height of buildings in that area are about 78 feet across the street on Powell Street and about 30 to 40 feet on the east side of Hollis Street. Again, the massing is different. As you can see, that the Bay Rock proposal is more, it's more symmetrical in design, both on the Hollis face and on the Greenway face. The Wareham design has that open space in the front, in the lower third, and then a bit more massive structure. And based on what we've seen on the block design, it tries to fit in both with what's on the east side of it, which is the Pulte homes, and also relate to the Emery Station East to the west of it. Secondly, the frontage along Hollis should have an active pedestrian environment and minimize vehicular access, particularly along Hollis and Powell. The Wareham proposal has its access on 59th Street. The Bay Rock proposal has right-in, right-out access off Hollis, but they do also have access on 59th, and I think majority of their access will be on 59th. The block proposal, by default, will only have access along Hollis, but they put it as far from the Powell intersection as possible. As far as pedestrian environment, they all have some form of retail and or commercial space, so it activates that, but the nature of the use, residential versus commercial, you have different users there, and to the extent that there's synergy between the office workers in these, or office workers or residential occupants in these spaces and those in the neighborhood and how they interact will give you the nature of the pedestrian access. It's not really how much you provide, but how the uses also interact with the other uses in the neighborhood. The new building should include massing elements to frame and provide visual excitement to the Greenway. And again, we've seen this in the Wareham design, where they actually put the open space and try to blend in with the Greenway. The same is true with the block proposal, where they have the screen. The open space is smaller, but then they do incorporate into the Greenway. And the Bay Rock proposal has some open space that they provide. They have a courtyard, an interior courtyard. I don't know how quite it relates to that. They have a setback in the middle of the Greenway, and we haven't seen the design of how that is, but between the stoops and that, I think there is some promise for some good interaction with the Greenway for all the designs, for all the proposals. All proposals have concealed parking. The pedestrian connection, including stoops, porches, and patios, again, this was mentioned earlier. They do all have that potential, and they do have that in the proposal. Development may be phased consistent with the feasibility study of the Payatak architects. And this was in case it was of one developer took the entire site. The Wareham proposal does provide for some phasing for the acquisition and development process. And I don't think the Bay Rock proposal includes that in their proposal. The development should analyze the possibility of retaining and rehabilitating portions of the existing building. That's the Alders property. And should note that all development proposals propose to remove that building, though the Wareham proposal does have an option of retaining a portion of it for a cafe and offsetting that with some open space towards their building. For project implementation, though this was not included in the block proposal, we assume that they can just proceed with the development, clean up their site under an OPA with the city. So their implementation is really within their control. Bay Rock anticipates a final DDA if we were to enter into agreement with them by the second quarter of 2008. And Wareham mentions that the function of the schedule is a function of the acquisition. For land use, this is where the largest difference is. You have Wareham as laboratory office, you have Bay Rock as residential, and you have Alders, which is, block, which is just on their property, but it's really mixed use, some residential, some commercial, and some retail. So there are three totally different proposals, and I think that's really where your decision will lie, is what type of development you want to see on this block. As for financial contribution, Bay Rock is prepared to commit $7 million. Wareham is prepared to commit $6 million plus the risk of relocating existing tenants on the Miller property, which we haven't looked into, but it could be a substantial undertaking. And as you heard, the block proposal, they will not seek any financial assistance. As to proposed revenue, we have, of course, having just seen the block proposal, we haven't run the numbers yet, but how many square feet is that?
We have about 10,000 retail and
Right.
25,000 residential. Our estimate is about $140,000 in tax revenue.
All right. Well, there you have about 140,000 is our estimate, and we estimate $500,000 a year for both the Bay Rock and the Ware proposal based on the size of the building. Sales tax would be different and users tax would be different, but the Wareham proposal will, if it's a laboratory, it generates more personal property income tax. Personal property tax. Commercial development, of course, has more traffic, so that's something to consider, and a residential project requires more city services. So the alternatives before you now are, terminate the RFP process. You can always just walk away from this and let the properties develop as is. And if you walk away from this, it's likely that Block will continue to develop their site as they had proposed. They can do this independently, or they can enter into owner participation with the agency independent, and so that they would abate the conditions on the site and remediate their site. The Miller parcel will stay as is, so if it's sold to another property owner, or they can maintain it as is or redevelop it, and that the agency can choose to assist at that time. And the Greenway itself, which is largely on the Collins properties, the city would have to develop that separately. That would be a separate effort. Or the city could choose a single developer, which is basically either be Bay Rock or Wareham, and enter into an exclusive right to negotiate agreement with them to develop the entire site. And based on what you heard, and I think all the developers got this right, is that rental residential is diminishing, though there is some residential proposed in the area. But the lower end market of rental might be threatened, as Bay Rock is suggesting. But at the same time, we're running out of places for commercial development in the city, and this is right across the street from the Emery Station East, and there's commercial all the way north of it. So based on that, really, the staff's recommendations that if you're going with a single developer, then we would probably propose that a commercial development be on this site. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this proposal? Ken, are there any other members of the public? Go ahead.
First, I want to thank the staff. This is a new happening here. We're finally getting to evaluate different proposals for RFPs, so this is really a very good, positive step forward. As to the proposals, I have one concern that the height of the buildings on the west side be looked at for shade on the greenway. I don't want to see too much shade on the greenway. Other than that, I don't have any other comment. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment? What is your pleasure, Councilmember Cassis?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all three proposers. I think, the block proposal got better here tonight. It would have been nice to have seen some of that ahead of time, but, and they are very different. Stuart, I think, from my own perspective, I don't think this is the place to do solely residential. So your proposal of the three is the least enticing to me. I think there's some interesting design and some good things that you were doing there. So I think for me it's between Block and Wareham, and I favor at that corner, particularly in view of the big setback that Wareham's proposing to do. I think the commercial development there makes more sense. I have to see more about this green wall and how it works, but I think it's for creating daytime activity at that location. I think the commercial development offers the best chance to really get people out there to support the new coffee shop that's going to open and a cafe that would be here, as opposed to folks that are more living here and gone. So I think, while I think a lot of the elements of the block proposal are interesting and I like them, on this particular site, I think that commercial goes. So I would support the Wareham development.
Okay. I have a question for you, Ignacio. God, what was my question going to be? Well, stay up while I think out loud here for a second. What I like about I agree with you in terms of just solely residential and thinking that the block proposal or Wareham are probably the stronger ones. I guess my question, my comments are, with the Wareham proposal, we get a lot more public green space added that's accessible and adds to the greenway. My question to you, Ignacio, is the Jones property across the street, I know has been under discussion, and part of my decision about which I would prefer depends on what kind of discussions are going on across the street, because the whole intersection has to tie in and fit together. So without committing any of the prospective developers for that property, can you say what kinds of uses are being talked about at this point?
We've had meetings with Archstone Smith, who I believe has purchased that property, and they're a residential developer. So they would be developing a residential project between Powell and Stanford on Hollis. And actually, that property includes the former Sierra Design property where the water tower is.
Oh.
So they would be developing both blocks. It would be more of a medium-scale residential project between Doyle and Hollis, and then on the smaller block where the water tower is would be about 20 townhouse units.
Okay, well,
And there would be some retail, I believe, also, just liner retail along Hollis Street.
I will state that at this point, I prefer the block proposal, and the reason is, number one, going for the LEED certification, the fact that they want to build more townhomes, which I think is a more desirable housing type that attracts a broader range of people than just standard studios or one-bedrooms. And also, I think in terms of the scale along the greenway, would fit in better. So for those reasons, although there's less, they're adding minimally to increasing the total green space. There's so many green elements in doing LEED certification, and the scale, I think, fits in more with the pedestrian experience of the greenway. So that's my preference at this point.
Before I discuss the proposals, and I want to thank everybody who brought forward the proposals. These are really good proposals, and I, as a person from Emeryville, am very pleased to see the interest and the care with which you've looked at the property. Before I discuss the proposals, though, I would like to say to staff that we are due and overdue for moving ahead to acquiring the rest of that parcel of the Greenway from Francis Collins. And I don't know why we're dragging our feet here, but we must move ahead with that. Am I to understand, Ignacio, that this is tied in? All right.
We are moving forward.
All right, but that's number one for me. I want to see that chunk of Greenway finished. So I just want to make that statement. Let me get back to the proposals. Much as I favor both of the housing proposals, I thought they were very well done, and I'm particularly interested in the LEED certified. But we hear from Jeff and Rich Robbins that they understand how important this LEED certification is to this city council and to the planning commission in the city of Emeryville. So one would hope as we move along the process that we focus on that LEED certification. I believe that the Hollis Street corridor should be primarily commercial. We are just on a feather's edge here in this very, very small town. We have built an awful lot of housing, and we need the commercial economic base to sustain the absolutely outstanding public services that we provide here. So I would go with the proposal with Wareham Development, but I want to thank both the block proposal and the Stuart Grandel for coming forward. There may be other areas in town we'd love to see you, but I hope this commercial development moves forward on Hollis Street. Can you make a motion, Dick?
Yes, I would move the Wareham Development's staff proposal, essentially, or staff recommendation.
And I would second that. Call the roll, please.
Council Agency Member Bukowski is recused. Agency Member Fricke is also recused. Agency Member Cassis,
Aye.
Vice Chair Atkin,
No?
and Chair Davis.
Aye. Thank you very much. Are there any communications